Hello and welcome back. So it is October already, can you believe it? We're just around the corner from Christmas. But October is also a month of celebration for me. And why? Because it is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And if you hang on for a while, I will tell you why it is a month of celebration for me. It was 5 years ago now. I had never been for a mammogram and I was 48 already. And you're supposed to start going when you are 40. And especially if you have cancer in your family. Now I have an aunt that was diagnosed with cancer at 48 and I had a great-grandmother that died of liver cancer, which they now think was actually breast cancer that then moved into her liver. But I'd heard how terribly scary mammograms were and how terribly sore they were, and I just decided we will do it when we need to and not a minute before, which was rather a silly decision that I made. So I was 48 and there was just something in the back of my head that was saying, it's time now. It's time. You shouldn't be playing with fire like this. It's time. And my father had passed away 4 years prior to this. And I said to a friend of mine, it's almost like my dad's whispering in my ear. Well, whatever was whispering in my ear, it was something far greater than I am. And I have learned that when I ignore those whispers in my ear, I'm normally very sorry that I did. So my neighbor told me that our local doctor's wife was doing a clinic, and it was a manual breast check. They didn't have the mammogram machines or anything, but you could go there and she would do a manual breast check with you and teach you how to do it properly yourself. So I booked an appointment with her, but by the time I booked the appointment, it was sort of the end of October, and I got the appointment for the last day in October. And on the morning of my appointment, she phones me and cancels and says to me, well, she can't do it in the new month because it's no longer Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And I was quite horrified. I was like, how can you do this? If it's such a passion of yours, how can, just because it's not October, you basically sell me down the river? But you know when they say that things happen for a reason and we only understand it once we get to the end of the story? That's exactly it. I now understand what a blessing it was that she did have to cancel that appointment. So I decide, cut a long story short, I decide to book an appointment with our local mammogram clinic. And I go, they do the mammogram, they do the sonar, they do another sonar, they do a third sonar, and then the nurse says to me, the doctor wants to talk to you. Do I have I ever had a mammogram before? So I go, no. And the doctor says, but you're 48. And I go, yes. Okay. So rule number 1, start going when you're 40, especially if you have a history of breast cancer in your family. So she says to me, well, we have found quite a lot of shadow in your breast and we don't know if it's just breast tissue or if it's cancer. So can you come back in 6 months' time so that we've got something to compare it with and see if anything's grown? So I said, okay. So they do 6 months later and it has grown. So then they say, I need a biopsy, which by the way isn't so either. So I go and I have the biopsy done and they find cancerous cells in my milk ducts. So now I need to have a lumpectomy and remove the milk ducts. They then discover that I've got cancerous cells in 4 of my milk ducts, and the surgeon says to me that if I remove 4 of my milk ducts and the tissue around, they're going to remove 3/4 of the tissue in my breast, so they might as well just remove the entire breast and do a full mastectomy on my right breast, which they do. I then have to go through reconstructive surgery. It took 6 months for them to do the reconstructive surgery. By the time I was finished, it was almost a year. And then a very dear friend of mine who lives in America was diagnosed with breast cancer. And she said to me, what will you tell me? What is your advice to me? Okay, so number 1, I caught my breast cancer exceptionally early. My first bit of advice to every woman out there over the age of 40, and especially if you have breast cancer in your family. If your breast cancer is hereditary, it is in your DNA. Your body does not see it as a foreign object. Your body sees it as part of your DNA. Make sure that you have your mammogram and your pap smears done every single year. If your medical aid pays for it, take full advantage of it. If it doesn't, either save for it or go to a free clinic and have it done. If you can only have it done every second year, please save for it every other year. Understand that you are saving to save your life. The only reason I got off so easily, because I didn't have to have chemo, I didn't have to have radiation, I didn't have to have that poison going through my body, because I caught it so easily. When they did the mastectomy, they took out all the tissue and they took out lymph glands and sent those off for testing. They came back clear because I caught it so early. And it was that little voice in the back of my head that was whispering into my ear that made me go. And whoever it was, I'm eternally grateful that they eventually started shouting at me and that I listened and that I went. Because life could have been very different if I hadn't. If I had gone to the local doctor's wife and she had done a manual test on me, she would never have found it because the cancerous cells were that tiny still. And I would have gone another year, and perhaps by the time I'd got to a mammogram clinic, it could have been far more dire than it was to begin with. So that is my first point of advice. Do not ever skip a year. Go each and every year. Make it your mission. Breast Cancer Awareness Month happens every October. So make October the month you go for your mammogram. Mine is April, because April was the last time I went for a mammogram before I had my mastectomy. It's also the month of my birthday. So it's not a month that's going to slip by and I'm going to get to the end of it and go, oh, I haven't been for my mammogram this year, and the next minute I know it's the end of the year. Go for your mammogram every single year. Have a pap smear every single year. If you catch it early enough, 98% of women who catch their cancer, their breast cancer and their cervical cancer or ovarian cancer early, survive and never get it again. And I'm very sorry, but those are really good odds. My second bit of advice is find somebody who's been through it. Talk to somebody who's been through it already. My aunt had been through it, and she lives in England, but she happened to be in South Africa visiting when I was going through all my doctor's appointments and my blood tests and the other tests and the scans and the everything else. And she gave me one bit of advice that I just kept thinking about, and it was so true. She said to me, the scariest part is beforehand. When you're actually going through it, it's not as scary as it is beforehand. It's scarier when you're finding out, when you're being diagnosed. That is far scarier than it is when you're actually going through the treatments, when you're going through the operations. And then afterwards it gets really scary too, because your mind starts going. As I said earlier, staring your mortality in the eye is a very humbling experience. My third bit of advice. Every morning I would wake up and I would say, I'm going to get through today and I'm going to be okay. Don't get arrogant with cancer, because it'll clap you. And for those people who don't understand what the word clap means, it means smack. Don't get arrogant with anything. I've never seen anybody win through arrogance. I'm going to get through today and I'm going to be okay. And then tomorrow when you wake up, you're going to get through today and you're going to be okay. And I think especially for women who are going through chemo and radiation and you're feeling so awful, I'm going to get through today and I'm going to be okay. Not I'm going to beat cancer, because you're going to get nowhere with an attitude like that. And then my last piece of advice is surround yourself with love. Surround yourself with people who love you, and surround yourself with a team who you have faith in. Surround yourself with a team that you feel love with. Your family, your friends, your doctors, your nurses, your hospital, My surgeon was the most incredible woman I think I have ever met. In fact, when I had to say goodbye to her, I cried. And she had been part of one of the most traumatic experiences of my life. And my experience wasn't that traumatic compared to other women that I know and what other women have been through. And she was just Dr. Gur. She was just incredible, absolutely incredible. She is one of Earth's angels, as far as I'm concerned. But I had such faith in that woman, and I still do have such faith in her. And if anybody ever asks me about my trip, she is one of the people that I will recommend without a shadow of a doubt. She was incredible. She was strict. There was no double-crossing her, but such incredible compassion and such leadership and she was just absolutely incredible. I still feel such gratitude when I think about that woman, because she made my journey so much easier. And that's it. Just take it day by day as it comes, and make sure that you have people who are there for you. And if you have somebody in your life that is experiencing this, and even if it's just a friend, it doesn't have to be a close family member, just send them a message every now and then. Just make sure that they're okay, because it makes them feel special and it makes them feel loved. And those people need to feel special and they need to feel loved. And even if it's just sending them a heart, I'm thinking about you. When I'm thinking about you, I'm going to send you a heart, because sometimes we get a bit busy. Those people need to hear it. They need to feel it. So if you're not a cancer patient, if you know somebody who is, as I say, even if it's a friend, make them know that they're special. Make them know that you're there to support them. You don't have to do it 24 hours a day. So with that note, I am sending lots of love to each and every single one of you. And I will see you next Friday. Goodbye.